This is a story of Christmas, of a man, Ebenezer Scrooge, who hated Christmas, but learned to love it, or rather, was taught to love it. Nobody liked Scrooge. He was a mean old man. He loved no one and he gave nothing. He despised merriment and happiness. He was as cold as the cold grave. One Christmas Eve, Scrooge was given a chance to change, a chance to live. Will he take it? Well, that's up to you. It was cold, biting weather, and Scrooge sat in his counting house. He was determined to wring the last few hours of work out of his clerk, Bob Cratchit, before the Christmas holiday began. Bob sat shivering in his corner of the office. His fire was almost out and he ached for some warmth. He longed for the clock to strike 6, the signal that he could finally go home. For tomorrow was Christmas Day and Bob loved Christmas. But as he looked up at the hands of the clock, they seemed to go slower and slower. Bob put a piece of coal into the fire and immediately began to feel warmer. Scrooge glared at him, but Bob was writing in his ledger as though nothing had happened. Luckily, at that very moment, the door swung open, and in walked the old man's nephew, Fred. "Merry Christmas, Uncle!" cried Fred cheerily. "I have come to invite you to Christmas dinner." Scrooge was having none of it. "Bah humbug," came the sour reply. But Fred wasn't put off so easily, and he promised his uncle that if he changed his mind, the invitation would remain open. With that he left, wishing Bob Cratchit a Merry Christmas on the way. "And a Merry Christmas to you too," called Bob with a cheery smile. Scrooge was furious when he discovered his clerk had been playing games instead of working. But once again, Bob was saved by circumstances. For at that very moment, two gentlemen collecting donations for the poor came visiting. Scrooge growled and sent them packing, empty-handed with another "Bah humbug." Bob felt sorry for the gentlemen, but was delighted when the clock announced it was finally time to go home. He wished Scrooge a Merry Christmas and danced out of the grim office. Scrooge muttered, put on his hat and scarf, and ventured out into the city. Scrooge left his office in high spirits. Twice he had rebuffed Christmas cheer. He allowed himself a wry smile. Little did he know that his good mood was about to change. A ghostly hearse rushed towards Scrooge. Thinking it a very ill omen, he hurried on upstairs. Scrooge was relieved to be home at last. As was his custom every evening, he sat down to a bowl of gruel. It was the cheapest way of warming his old bones. This evening he hoped it would also banish the peculiar events of his journey home. The ghost of old Jacob Marley appeared from the tiles. He was desperate to warn Scrooge of the fate that awaited him if he did not change his ways. But Scrooge refused to believe in ghosts. It was going to be hard to make him change his mind. He wrote off Marley's ghostly appearance as a bout of indigestion. And now he decided he was going to sleep it off. Marley's ghost was at a loss. What could he do to make Scrooge really believe there was a ghost in the room? Marley's ghost told his old friend how misguided they had both been in life, caring only for money. He uttered a terrible warning. If you would escape a fate like mine, you'd best listen to what I say. As the clock strikes 1, you'll be visited by 3 different ghosts. Learn from what they show you, or, like me, you will be doomed to walk the earth with chains around your neck. And with that, Marley's ghost flew away through the window. Scrooge sat stunned upon his bed. The big clock in the hallway announced the terrible hour, 1 o'clock. At once a shiny bright spirit appeared right in front of Scrooge's eyes. I am the ghost of Christmas past, it said solemnly. Come with me. The ghost of Christmas past took Scrooge on a journey back into his childhood. Scrooge looked on in astonishment. It was the snowbound country lane down which he had walked every morning to school as a small boy. But his joy quickly turned to sadness as he recalled how lonely those childhood years had really been. A couple of boys were playing in the snow. Look closely, Scrooge, said the ghost. Scrooge peered at the boys and with a gasp realized, it's me, a child again. I'm making a snowman. Go and help, suggested the ghost. What could be more fun than a game of snowballs, Scrooge, smiled the ghost. You do remember fun, don't you? The ghost smiled at Scrooge's newfound sense of joy. He motioned for Scrooge to follow, and the scene changed again, from snowy cold to glorious warmth. Scrooge opened his eyes, and for a second could not believe them. 20 years had gone by in a flash. "Do you recognize this, Ebenezer?" asked the ghost. Scrooge did. It was the Christmas party at Fezziwig's where he had worked as a young man. Here was merriment in all its glory. Scrooge felt quite young again and remembered that all he'd wanted was to dance with Belle, the beautiful girl in the blue dress. Mr. Fezziwig was in the very best of moods. He wanted to give away prizes and enticed everyone to come and join in the games. Ebenezer knew that if he won a prize, he could offer it to the lady. That might just give him the courage he lacked. Mr. Fezziwig happily presented young Ebenezer with the prize, a lovely red rose, knowing exactly which young lady he would give it to. Scrooge's old heart felt again that little leap as Belle smiled at his younger self. If only the fiddler would play a merrier tune, he thought, he might pluck up the courage to ask her to dance. As the music picked up pace, Ebenezer finally asked Belle for a dance, and, to his utmost joy, she accepted. Ebenezer was the happiest man alive, and old Scrooge nearly cried thinking about it. Scrooge looked at his younger self in the arms of his lovely sweetheart and felt both joy and sorrow. Joy for that sweet kiss and sorrow for what was to follow, for he knew that a year later he would leave Belle. He turned to the ghost and begged, "Show me no more. What is done is done. I cannot alter the past." The ghost nodded wisely. And before Scrooge knew what was happening, he found himself back in his old bedchamber, quite alone. Scrooge longed for sleep, but also dreaded the next encounter, for Marley had promised him 3 ghostly visits. As he sat, trying to put the experience behind him, the clock tolled once more. A spectral light poured through every crack in the door, and Scrooge knew that the next ghost was waiting for him. He locked the door with a key and blocked it with a chair. As long as both remained in place, he knew he would be safe. Scrooge was powerless to stop the door from opening. He shrank back, expecting even worse horrors. But through the bright light, a great jolly giant appeared, sitting amongst a mountain of Christmas delights. "Scrooge, dear fellow," boomed the ghost cheerily. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am the ghost of Christmas present." Scrooge muttered a greeting. "Where are we going?" he sighed. "Why, to have a bit of fun, of course," cried the ghost. "That's what Christmas is all about." And with that, they were gone. Scrooge gripped the ghost's enormous robe tightly and was led through the Christmas streets. The ghost was determined to show him that even the poorest of folk made the most of Christmas. That they could be happy with the little they had, and that even the smallest amount more could make their day brighter. With his wand of cheer, the ghost set forth to spread joy through the streets, dragging Scrooge behind. They had arrived. But where? Scrooge didn't recognize the little house because he had never been here before. Yet this was the home of his very own clerk, Bob Cratchit. "Ghost, where are we?" asked Scrooge fearfully. The ghost laughed deeply and merely said, "You shall find out soon enough." Scrooge found himself in a small kitchen full of bustling activity. The Cratchit house was small but cosy. Bob's wife was busy preparing the Christmas dinner. Around her, the children amused themselves playing cards and singing carols. Excitement and good cheer filled the room to the brim. The ghost of Christmas present nodded his approval and settled in to enjoy the spectacle. Scrooge, intrigued by this window into his clerk's family life, followed his example. clear to Scrooge that even though his clerk had little money, he and his family had all had a fine Christmas day. Scrooge wondered at the little boy wearing a leg brace, Tiny Tim. How brave he was. But then the ghost beckoned Scrooge on. It was time to visit another house. Now the ghost took Scrooge to a different party, but an equally merry one. It was the very party that his nephew, Fred, had invited him to that afternoon. Fred had invited all his dearest friends around to play games. Scrooge listened as Fred described the visit to his office. How he had told Fred that Christmas was humbug. They roared with laughter. Scrooge asked the ghost how he might make amends. "You see young Topper there," the ghost replied. "He has eyes for the lady, and she for him, but they are both too shy. Beat Topper at cards, and he will have no choice but to make merry with the others." Everybody laughed as Topper kissed his girl. The party was great fun and Scrooge didn't want to leave. But the ghost now turned to him with a long sigh. "My life upon this earth is brief, Scrooge. It ends tonight, and the time draws near." Scrooge felt the party blur and grow distant. He was being hurled from the warmth of his newfound family. The warm glow was replaced by cold light and dark shadows. A grim apparition, draped and hooded, now drifted towards him, bony arm outstretched. Scrooge knew it could be but one thing: the ghost of Christmas yet to come. He stared in horror, for there, at the end of the street, was the black hearse that had taken his partner Marley away all those years ago. It was here to take him away too. Scrooge knew he must flee as fast as he could and throw every obstacle in the way of this fiendish apparition. Scrooge breathed a sigh of relief. Surely nothing the ghost could throw at him now would be as terrifying. But as the light cleared and he found himself, still tiny as a mouse, in Joe's rag and bottle shop, he knew that his descent had still further to go. Far above him a conversation was going on, between some proper-sized people, but down here he could only hear fragments. What were they talking about? There was only one way to find out. He was going to have to climb up to get a better view, and to hear what he needed to hear. Scrooge realized the awful truth of the scene he was witnessing. Some poor soul had died and all his possessions had been stolen, to be sold here in Joe's rag and bottle shop. But who might this sad victim be? There was something very familiar about the whole event. Some rats had caught up with Scrooge, and Joe whacked his cane down on the table. Scrooge and the rats fled together. But as the rats regrouped, it became clear to Scrooge that they hadn't given up the chase. He ran into a maze of rags and bottles. Scrooge breathed a sigh of relief. He had escaped. Where was he? What delightful garden must lie hidden beneath this white carpet? And then as the shapes around him became clear, he realized this was a cemetery, and the withered arm of the ghost of Christmas yet to come was pointing at one particular gravestone. Scrooge realized with a terrible dread what the ghost had been showing him all along. His own future. How he would die alone with no one to care for him if he continued down the same path. It was too much for the old man. He slumped in a dead faint into the cold snow. The ghost, ever silent, looked on. When Scrooge awoke, he found himself back in his bedchamber. A surge of joy flooded through him. He was alive. The nightmare had ended. Outside, church bells were ringing. There could be no mistake. It was Christmas Day. He laughed out loud with relief. He had been on a desperate and terrible journey, but it was Christmas, and it was going to be the best Christmas he had ever had. Into the street went Scrooge, armed with a great many coins. He was going to spread cheer through the whole city, and for the first time in a very long time, he was going to enjoy himself. Scrooge had shared all his coins with the good people on the street, and now he was going to pay a visit to his good clerk, Bob Cratchit, and wish him a very unexpected Merry Christmas. Scrooge arrived at Bob Cratchit's house full of excitement. Perfect. The Cratchits were all away at church. Scrooge had bought up every Christmas decoration, present and treat still unsold in the city. He had a plan to give the Cratchits the very best Christmas they had ever had. In the distance, Scrooge heard the merry laughter of Bob Cratchit returning from church with his wife and children. He giggled to himself at the surprise in store. The family pushed open the door and stopped in amazement. "It's a miracle," said Bob. "Papa, is this really our house?" cried Tiny Tim in awe. Once the shock had faded, the whole family threw themselves into unwrapping presents, marvelling at the decorations, delighting at the size of the turkey. Tiny Tim declared, "This is the best Christmas ever." Scrooge took one last look and slipped away. He had one more wrong to right. Scrooge peered in at Fred's party. "I thought I'd come to dinner," he said nervously. "If you'll have me, of course." But the good nature of his nephew Fred was equal to the occasion. "Why, Uncle Ebenezer, what joy! Of course, come in, dear man." Scrooge chuckled. He had hidden presents for them all, and now was the time to give them out. And thus did Ebenezer Scrooge come to the end of the most important Christmas day of his life. A day which took him from darkness to light, from sorrow to joy, from loneliness to the comfort not just of his own family, but of the greater human family to which we all must belong. In years to come, his newfound love and charity filled all who knew him with hope and happiness. To Tiny Tim, who found new strength and long life, he became like a second father. He never told of the reasons for his transformation, but his good deeds spoke forever.